Next one, Pastor Steve says, should my fiance agree with me on future ministry? And there's a second part to this. Should my fiance agree with me on future ministry or things I believe God is calling me to? If not, is this something you would hold off on marriage for?
I would, you're asking me, and my answer is yes, I definitely would hold off on marriage for that. If I knew when I was getting married that I was going to be involved in ministry, and so one of the things that I was looking for in a wife specifically was somebody who was in love with Jesus and wanted to, would be willing, actually would be called to go along with me and be involved in ministry. Anybody who knows my wife knows that, when you talk about your better half, she's my better half. And so she's pleasant, she's kind, she's bubbly, she's fun, she's all the things that I'm not. I'm kind of goofing around there, but she is, and so she's a big part of my ministry, and she's someone that's made it really fruitful. And what you don't want, if you're going to be called into ministry, is someone that's going to just not fulfill that with you. And the other thing about this is you don't drag people places that they don't want to go. And so if I was, when I was looking at who I was going to marry, there were, it's like I dated a number of girls. And one of the things that I was looking at, again, was whether or not they would feel called to do the things that I was obviously going to be doing. And so on my part, I didn't want somebody dragging me down, but on their part, I wasn't willing to, drag somebody along. You don't want to do that with people. And even my wife, as far as being involved with ministry, I've moved her all over the place. And our first move was about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from her family. It was still in the same region, but she had some real problems with that, and so we prayed through it, and until she was convinced that that's what God wanted us to do. And so then we went there, and then the move up here is 1,000 miles away from her family. And so that again was something that I wouldn't have done if she wasn't on board. And so again, I don't like being dragged places I don't want to go, and so I'm not going to do that with other people either, and especially my wife. And so those are things that you need to be examining, you need to be checking out, and when you're looking at a relationship where it looks like it's going towards marriage, I would be quiet about this. You're a guy, and I would keep my mouth shut about this, and I would just start praying for her and see if God changes her heart or if God moves her in that direction. I wouldn't walk up to her and say, you get in between me and Jesus and we're done, or do something like that. I'd be a little bit kinder. I might have done that when I was younger, but
now you're wise.
Now I'm wiser. Yes, I've been trained, and so I would give her some time, pray for her. You might broach the subject and talk to her a little bit about it, and ask her to see what God wants in the situation. Make sure that she's not just conforming to your viewpoint on it, just to be married to you, and then she thinks that maybe later on you'll change your mind, or she'll change you. You don't want to get caught in that trap. But yeah, it's something that I would be paying attention to. So
you already alluded to it, but let's say you're married. God's telling you, it could be either one, man or woman. God's telling you to go into a ministry, and your spouse is either reluctant or doesn't want you to. Do you not enter it until they're on board, or what do you do if you're married?
If I'm married and that's going on, I'm having some really good talks with my wife, and I'm praying for her. And this is stuff that I did. Mm-hmm. So and I'm praying for her, and I'm leaving it in the Lord's hands, and asking Him to change things. And in my situation, that's exactly what He did. In fact, God, at one point, we're praying about a move, and my wife is praying about it, and she fasts and prays and that kind of stuff. And she didn't tell me for a couple of days afterwards, but God told her to do what your husband tells you. That's what He told her. was like, yes! And, yeah, so, you know, it's a cool thing. God can speak to people. If I knew that I was called to ministry and my wife was, you know, just kind of standing in the way of it, we'd probably have an argument, you know, and I'd get a little bit more forceful about it if I knew that that's what God wanted me to do. But I do, you know, I'd spend a lot of time waiting for her to change her heart. And if I saw that she was just being stubborn and that kind of stuff, we might have an argument, you know, about that. Because I'm on the planet to serve Jesus, so my wife needs to know that, and vice versa, you know. And so, but as a general rule, I just don't drag my wife where she doesn't want to go, and God's always been faithful to change her heart. So
this just popped in my head, but one of the things I remember Chuck Smith saying is that, and I think it was on his Calvary Distinctives book, but he said that as far as his wife goes, he was called to be a pastor, his wife was not. And so what do you say to people who, and it can be pastor, it could be worship, it could be anything, where you become full-time ministry or whatever, and you know, people expect the wife to do the same thing, and she's teaching women's Bible study and doing all this stuff.
Right.
Where my interpretation of Chuck Smith's comment was that I married my wife to marry my wife,
right,
not to marry a pastor's wife or anything else. So
right.
Can there be that disconnect too, where God's calling you in the ministry and she's for you, but she doesn't have to be, you know, a Beth Moore or somebody like that?
Right, yeah, no. My wife doesn't teach the women's study. And so we have a lady in our fellowship, it's Marcy, who God has gifted as far as being a teacher. My wife does run the women's ministry. All the ladies who are involved in it are faithful to go and talk to my wife, and it's because I trust my wife, and she knows where my heart's at and that kind of stuff. So she administers over the women's study, and she's pretty loose about that. You know, she's not, you know, got people under her thumb and stuff, but you know, the people that we have serving around here are polite and have a right heart and make sure that they run things by her. And so, again, my wife doesn't teach. My wife has, over the years, people have told her, you know, said to her things like, don't you think you should wear more dresses? You know,
Really?
Yeah. Sometimes
In the Calvary chapels?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, here in our town.
Interesting.
Yeah. Some people have come up to her and said, so do you play the piano?
I remember that one.
Yeah. Or you know, do you sing on the worship team? And you know, and again, it's that whole kind of thing where you think that the wife is supposed to be the worship leader or something, and that's not the case. My wife was called to be my wife, and she was called to be the one who was watching out for my kids and keeping the home and that kind of thing. And fortunately, I've got a wife who has other gifts too. So she's the principal of our school,
Right.
and she's the best one we've ever had. You know, kids love her, the teachers love her, and you know, she's great in that role. And so she does all kinds of stuff around here, but she doesn't want to teach, and she'll do it every once in a while. But she doesn't want to teach. She doesn't want to counsel. And I think that she's got some good things to say, but you know, she doesn't feel like that's her gift. And hospitality is her gift,
Yep.
Absolutely, and encouragement is her gift, absolutely. You know, and obviously she's administrating 2 different ministries here, and she's gifted there too. So, yeah, she's not called to be a pastor. You know.
What do you think she said to the lady that asked her if she plays piano? Do you remember?
She probably said something along the lines of, you know, no, I don't play the piano, and I don't sing either. Well, I do sing, but not well. You know, she's gotten better over the years. She's a better singer than when we first got married, and but she's got a key. It's F sharp. Brandon, it's F sharp. That's the key that my wife can sing in. So, Brandon's our worship leader.